Welcome, friends. My name is Silas Ollegario, and I'm the host of Think Onward, a podcast about books, studies, productivity, and lifestyle now, after the intro. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Think Onward. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for another week that we are going to be together. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know if you're driving, just doing the dishes, or sitting around your couch during this quarantine, this lockdown, or in the case of Brazil, this fake lockdown. Anyway, I don't know how you're listening to it, but I appreciate so much you're doing it. On today's episode, there's going to be me trying to explain some personal things that are not necessarily so personal that cannot be shared on the internet. Some of the people I know who have been following this podcast have started asking me questions about this whole moving to Canada and going into medicine thing. So if you guys are up to, I'd like to take today's episode to talk about this. But before we move on, I gotta tell you one thing regarding next week's guest. I advertised a specific guest for this week's episode, but I made a mistake while mixing the recording. And this guest and I are gonna have to record our conversation once more. So in case you're waiting for my chat with Priscilla Maron, hang on tight, it's coming. Maybe next week, maybe the other one, but it's coming, I promise. One more thing, it is so incredibly nice to see the audience of Think Onward increasing, and I really appreciate that. People from so many different countries and places have been following us every single week, and that's really nice. So thank you for that. And in case you don't know it, you can also follow me on YouTube. There's a page now. With every episode of Think Onward and also a new video every Saturday. Just go there on YouTube and type my name, Silas Ollegario. Okay, talking about moving to Canada and the whole medical school thing. Just straight to the point, I think the best moment to start the story is back in 2013. Try imagine me with a Bob Saget voice talking to his kids in How I Met Your Mother. Kids, back in 2013. Anyway, I'm sorry. Seriously though, in 2013, I kind of started feeling bad about some things I was going through in Brazil. Things that are not necessarily related to politics or to anything like that. Although I'm not going to lie that the fact Brazil has been going through a political and financial crisis ever since I can remember did play an important role on this story, but that wasn't everything. It was in 2013 that I noticed maybe Brazil wasn't enough for me anymore, or for my personal and professional dreams. After going to law school in Porto Alegre, the city I was born, and doing it just because it was an opportunity my mom did not allow me to miss. I moved to Brasilia, which is the city my parents have been living since 2008. I just want to say something about Brasilia. This city and the people I met here were so important throughout this process. Not because I got any kind of help, but because being around the friends I made here was a nice and cool way of having a last image of Brazil. I don't know if it makes sense to you, but it certainly does to me. And also, the one who I happily call wife was born in Brasilia, and if it wasn't for her, none of this would be possible. But again, going back to the timeline, in 2014, after a whole year in Brasilia, I was still unhappy in terms of my future. Then talking to my mom, who has always listened to me, my dilemmas, and etc., I decided that going to the U.S. was the thing I should be pursuing. And one of my best friends, Christy Rich, who I miss so much, by the way, and is probably listening to this episode. Hey, Blondie. Christy opened my eyes to Canada. Um, Christy's American and lived many years in Brazil, where we've met. She moved back to the U.S. 6 years ago and was actually helping me with this idea of moving permanently to America. What happened was that after exhausting the options that were actually doable for me, she said, "Why not Canada?" And I have to be honest, Canada never appeared on my radar. Don't ask me why, it just never had. But then it did. And I started looking at it and began trying to understand the immigration process, which is something very nice to talk in a future episode. But with Rebecca, because she explains so much better than I do the whole thing. Anyway, I decided Canada will become my home and native land. And at this point, there was a detail that needed to be addressed. Rebecca and I had just met, and the moment to be honest with each other about the future together as a couple or not came near. We talked, and while talking, Rebecca also expressed her desire to move from Brazil, and that was the moment I knew she was the one for me. And as we decided to be together, part of the process was stopped because sometime after we decided that sometime after we decided to be together, we decided also that the smart and not necessarily easier, but definitely most responsible thing to do before moving to Canada was to get married. And I'm so glad we did it. On September 15th, 2017, we both said, "I do." And the journey continued, but now as a married couple, Mr. and Mrs. Ollegario. And that was the end of a chapter, beginning of a new one. Why? Because one of the most important things in terms of moving to a new country is understanding everything that is to be understood about such country. We did it, and it took time, but Canada became so familiar to us, that we feel like we know so much about that place, even though we've never lived there. It's just crazy. I mean, it might sound crazy for you, but that's how we feel. And after saving money to get married and actually having the wedding of our dreams, a new saving money process started. I ain't going to details about this, but just so you know, there's a minimum amount of money the Canadian government requires we have. So it took us some time and also some miracles along the way, so we could do it. Thank God we did it, and the process could happen. But now the question some people have asked me, why going to Canada to study medicine? Aren't there any medical schools in Brazil? Well, of course there are, and of course being a doctor in Brazil is great. And back when I was in high school, that was my go-to move. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it. Because of financial reasons, my parents couldn't afford having me studying one extra year, focusing on getting to med school in Brazil. Neither could they afford me not having a paying job throughout medical school. So letting it go was the thing I had to do. That childhood dream was left behind and new horizons were set in place. However, in 2014, when I decided to move away from Brazil, nothing besides pursuing the dream of becoming a physician made sense. If I was going to start my life from scratch, basically, why not going to that new country to fulfill my professional dream? Of course, the process of going to medical school in Canada, in the US for that matter, is completely different than the one used in Brazil. Basically, what needs to happen is a pre-med thing. You got to go to college or university and meet the requirements before starting the medical training. That's actually the part of the process I'm living right now. Mount Royal University in Calgary, Alberta, was the university who accepted me in such a short notice, so I could start my pre-med journey. I say short notice because in 2020, when Rebecca and I were virtually ready to move and to immigrate to Canada, COVID hit us. Not the both of us specifically, but hit the world. Brazil, Canada, you name it. Every single corner of the planet was hit by the coronavirus 2019, and everything went on hold. Thankfully, the Canadian government decided back in June or July of 2020 to allow all students, the ones in Canada and the international students still living in their home countries, to start the fall term 100% online. And that was perfect for me. I mean, not perfect, but definitely very good, because perfect will be being there. And due to the application deadlines, Mount Royal University was incredibly adaptive to the new thing that was going on around the world, and I was accepted. Still, for the next 2 years, pre-med will be my life until getting to the other 3 or 4 years required to actually becoming a doctor. Throughout all these years up till now, and also thinking about the years of training I still have ahead, I can only appreciate my wife, who began this journey as a friend, became girlfriend, and now, as I record this podcast, is sitting on our bed, the one we share as husband and wife. I don't intend to preach any kind of lesson after you've listened to what I said, but I hope you feel inspired of going after the things you pray, wait, and hope for. It don't matter how long sometimes might take. Sometimes it don't matter how long some things might take. Dreams are definitely worth the wait. I hope you have an amazing week. Remember to keep moving and thinking onward, because let's face it, onward is the best direction we can take, always.